I'm very happy to be joined out of the bunker, the author of a brand new book, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, radio talk show host, best-selling author, the great one, Mark Levin. How are you, brother?
John,
good to see you, man. It's good to get you out of the bunker there. The book is phenomenal.
Thank you.
All right. I've read it cover to cover. I want to start with, you believe America is now in a post-constitutional period and that this was anticipated by our framers in 1787, and there is a mechanism that they have created that would allow amendments to begin in the states. I'm not explaining it as well as you. I want you to lay out the case.
Well, I think we had to stop fooling ourselves. You know, I've written other books about political philosophy and conservatism and non-conservatism. You look at the government today, it's not really a representative republic. You've got a massive bureaucracy pushing out 3,000 laws every year. Nobody's voted for them. Nobody even knows who they are. You look at the Supreme Court today, one justice moving in one direction or another issues these breathtaking laws that have effect on the entirety of society with no recourse. You have the President of the United States brazenly, rewriting laws and saying if Congress doesn't act, he will act. And then you have Congress writing these massive laws under the cover of dark, issuing them quickly on matters that they don't have any right to legislate about, and conferring enormous authority on these departments and agencies they create, delegating lawmaking authority to the executive branch. So it's not really a representative republic. It's not really a federal republic. It's not really a constitutional republic, because we're unmoored from the Constitution. And for 100 years, the progressive movement, I call them the statists, have been chiseling away at the constitutional construct. And it's time for conservatives and other Americans to say, you know what, they've succeeded. This is why we have top-down government. This is why the government's involved in everything from selecting our toilets and our light bulbs and our automobiles and our toasters. Now they're in our health care. They're collecting all kinds of data on us. And I'm simply saying, I think it's time, if Americans want to remain free, to start reacquainting ourselves with the Constitution, and specifically Article 5, and specifically the second part of Article 5, which is the amendment process. The framers thought, some of them in particular, that we might reach this point with an oppressive centralized government. You look at the Constitution, it is written to prevent this. But they feared that, politicians would lack virtue and we would reach this state. And so they left us a legacy. They left us the Second Amendment process under the Constitution, which essentially bypasses Congress, bypasses the federal government, and gives the states the power collectively in a convention, not a constitutional convention, a convention, the Constitution says, for proposing amendments to the rest of the states.
That's very different, though.
Very different, because the Constitution is not up for grabs any more than when Congress, two-thirds of both houses, recommends amendments to the Constitution. Here, the states would be recommending amendments to the Constitution. The reason the framers did this is because they said an oppressive federal government, an oppressive Congress, is not going to rein itself in with constitutional amendments. And I'm not into just amending the Constitution willy-nilly. I'm into following the process the Constitution itself grants us. We are the progeny of the framers of the Constitution. This is our heritage. And we can beg senators and congressmen to reform themselves all we want. It doesn't appear they're prepared to do it. We can beg the Supreme Court not to issue outrageous decisions based on their own policy preferences. They ignore us. The President of the United States could care less what we think. So this is a way, the framers believed, for the grassroots, the people engaged with state delegates and state senators to begin a long process of taking our country back.
This is an answer to all those people that are watching the statists create this all-powerful central government, an assault on individual liberty, and all the people that say, what can we do? This is the answer. Now, Article 5 provides two methods to make these amendments. I want you to explain in total what that means, because it's only been used one way historically.
Right.
27 amendments. It's only been used the one way, where it initiated in Congress. Explain the second way.
Well, two-thirds members of both houses of Congress can propose amendments, send them to the states, and you need three-fourths of the states to ratify them to become part of the Constitution. There's another way. The second way, that's never actually been tried in an effective manner. It's never actually been done. but it has as much legitimacy and authority as the other method. And it bypasses Congress. Essentially, you need 2/3 of the states to inform Congress that they're going to hold a convention for the purpose of proposing amendments, just as if Congress has a meeting and proposes amendments. And at that convention, amendments can be debated and discussed and so forth, but they don't become part of the Constitution unless 3/4 of the states, when presented with them, adopt the amendments. And I would just say to some skeptics, not a lot, but some skeptics who claim to be conservatives and constitutionalists, but are basically rhinos and who like the status quo, this is the process the Constitution provides for occasions like this. If you support federalism, I mean, now's the time to do it. If you think states should have more authority, now's the time to do it. This federal government is a juggernaut in the opposite direction, and the circle of liberty around every individual is getting smaller and smaller, and states really have no say in anything anymore.
You said you took on this project not because you think the Constitution is outdated. You believe it's just the opposite. But the states have been so successful, you say, that they have disfigured and dismantled the Constitution. Now, you propose a series of amendments. You actually write them out. You call them the Liberty Amendments. Let's go through the process of what this would mean and how it would give power back to the states.
Well, first of all, people will say, don't you support the Constitution? Why do you want to change it? I love the Constitution. I revere the Constitution. It's been changed. I call this a post-constitutional period. Quickly, an example, Obamacare, obvious. Congress passed a law it didn't even have the power to pass. The President of the United States signed a law he didn't have the power to sign. The Supreme Court upheld a law that is blatantly unconstitutional. They twisted the statute, changed the language of the statute, rewrote the statute, and this is going on all the time.
Let me ask you and follow up on that, because lawmakers exempt themselves from Obamacare. And the American people, if it's good for them, why isn't it good for them and their staffs? Isn't that?
Because we have these governing masterminds, this professional ruling class. And when you look at the framers, there was never supposed to be a professional ruling class. There was this thing called rotation in and out of office. That's why senators served 6 years, congressmen 2 years. But they didn't have term limits back then because it never even occurred to them that you would have senators serving 36, 42 years or members of the House 20, 30, 40 years. It didn't even occur to them. They felt strongly in a citizen legislature. And it's interesting. Thomas Jefferson, who was not at the Constitutional Convention, one of the complaints he had about the Constitution, and he ended up supporting it, was this issue of rotation. He thought members of the House shouldn't serve more than 1 year. And interestingly, just on that one subject, in most of the 1800s, members of the House served 2 years, and that was it. 50% of them, there was turnover. So I hear people saying, what about continuity? Continuity of what? This?
All right, stay right there. The great one, Mark Levin, is called The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic. We continue now with the great one, Mark Levin. The book is called The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic. All right, we're going to get into this in a lot of detail Friday, but I want to give a preview, because you have offered... You're saying that the states can propose constitutional amendments, not a constitutional convention.
Correct.
Okay. Let's go over them. Right. First one.
Well, term limits for members of the House and the Senate, because historically, when they created this bicameral legislature, the House 2 terms, the Senate 6 terms, and the Senate was supposed to be made up of members who were chosen by the state legislatures, by the way, and I addressed that too. They wanted rotation in and out of office because they wanted these people to have a real, true understanding of what their constituents were thinking and what they were feeling. As a matter of fact, really, Congress was part-time. Farmers continued to farm. Businessmen continued to be businessmen. And you can see the problem today. I mean, you have members of Congress who represent certain industries or unions or interests as much or more than their constituents or states. Mm-hmm. You have an example. I'll give you an example. Let me also talk about the 17th Amendment, where you have to take this.
You want to abolish it.
Well, I want to go back to what the framers intended for. The Senate makes no sense.
Well, let me just say, so the first one is an amendment, term limits for Congress, and you lay out the historical reasons for it.
And 12 years and out.
12 years
12 years total, one house or the other or combined.
And then your second one is an amendment to restore the Senate to the way we used to elect senators.
Right, and this would be a tough argument. Look, these are ideas that I think would help reestablish constitutional republicanism. as the framers intended, and I make the case in each chapter, I don't just throw them out, I draw from the framers and why they did this. This bicameral plan was presented by the Sherman plan, a Connecticut plan, and the plan was that the Senate would be representative of the states, so the states would have input in what's going on in the federal government, and in the House of Representatives, direct election 2 years. Now we have people sitting 20 years, not representing the states. It's a mishmash, and the problem is you have this professional, dug-in, entrenched bureaucracy.
All right, so term limits for Congress go back to the old way the state legislators will elect senators. Then you say an amendment that would establish term limit for Supreme Court justices,
right,
and a supermajority legislative override.
Right. Well, I mean, why should one lawyer, depending on really the luck of the draw, the historical times, a 5-4 vote for all time set in place cultural, social, economic, whatever policy for the nation, a nation of 310 million people without any recourse whatsoever.
One person.
It is absurd. That's not what the Constitution intended. There's nobody at the Constitutional Convention that argued for that. And if that had been the case, there would have been no Constitution because the states would never have conferred that kind of power.
You even said in the book that the framers thought that would be the weakest branch.
They thought that would be the weakest branch. There's no question about it. And I'm not saying eliminate the independence of the judiciary, the Supreme Court. What I'm saying is in some of these far-reaching societal cases, well, let society have a say. 3/5 of the states or 3/5 of Congress having the power to override a majority Supreme Court decision.
All right. Then you have 2 amendments to limit federal spending and taxing.
Right.
We're not going to survive as a republic if we keep spending. And you outline all this in great detail, but the short synopsis.
That may be the longest chapter because all the information is necessary. Does anybody really think this Congress, this president, is going to limit itself? Have they shown any evidence of that? In fact, this president comes to office, massively expands spending, and quite frankly, George W. Bush massively expanded spending under him with a Republican Congress. This is not Republican or Democrat. This is constitutional and originalism. And the problem is, under Republican administrations and Congresses, under Democrat administrations and Congresses, we have this massive explosion of the federal government. And if we don't constitutionally limit that, and how much of our private property they can take through taxation, well, we're doomed because they're not going to limit it.
You have an amendment to limit the federal bureaucracy, which is now, as you said, they're in every aspect of our life. They're even designing our cars.
Well, the federal bureaucracy is the 4th branch of government. Yeah. They issue 3,000 laws and rules a year. I mean, and the people have no say in it. So that is a delegation Congress gave to them, and I say it ought to be delegated back.
You believe an amendment to promote free enterprise, protect private property, grant the states the authority to directly amend the Constitution.
Right. 2/3 of the states to directly amend the Constitution. And look, the Constitution's been rewritten and mangled and amended left and right by all 3 branches of the federal government. I'm talking about a stable, predictable system. Still, a supermajority 2/3 states is not easy. You know, 3/5 of the states wouldn't even sign the Obamacare brief challenging that. So these are still supermajorities. But, Sean, there needs to be recourse for the people, not through majoritarianism, but through representative government. That's what the states were supposed to be, a buffer between them and the federal government.
So the bottom line here is, and we'll go into great detail for the full hour we have you on Friday night. You're coming back. We're going to do a live audience show. But the bottom line is that there is recourse. It is within the Constitution itself. And it begins with state legislatures, and the amendment process can happen. In other words, you believe this is the answer for those that say, what do we do?
I believe it's the answer, and I believe we conservatives or constitutionalists or Americans generally, we have to have the resolve that the left has. They spent 100 years pushing for this government-run health care, and they finally got it, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. We should spend whatever time it takes to protect our children and our grandchildren and future generations and reestablish the Constitution and the liberty that flows from it.
All right, Mark, great book, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic. We'll see you Friday night.
Thanks
so much.